welcome to episode 398 of the HaskinCast Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, here with a fantastic guest on this Saturday. Welcome to the show, Noam. Noam, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It is my absolute
398,
pleasure.
398 episodes is a lot. I
It
appreciate
is.
it.
It is. Yeah, I've been doing this for, this is my 7th year on this podcast. I did 398 for the Uriah Heep, the Magicians podcast as well, that just wrapped last year. And then all, the guest spots and everything else. I don't even know how many podcasts I've been on at this point, but it's fun.
That's
I love doing it.
yeah, that's amazing. I really appreciate uh you having me on and
Yeah, my
a
pleasure.
great podcast. So
Well, you guys have your YouTube channel that you're got a quite a growing list of videos. It's a little time consuming. It's a little bit of work, but at the end of the day, it's kind of fun, right?
yeah, I've been really kind of honing in into creating more and more quality content
Mhm.
on our YouTube channel. And as you said, like it's a lot of hard work, but it's also a lot of fun, and I feel like that's something that really kind of resonates with a lot of people. And
Mhm.
it's also a way to sort of, in my perspective, kind of share the journey that I go through with all these crazy, adventures of plugin creation and meeting people and stuff. So it's been going great.
Well, I think YouTube has become kind of our go-to. It's like a video Google. You Google certain things and you YouTube other things. It's really started to dominate our world.
Yeah, a friend of mine, it's an interesting perspective. Like a friend of mine, I had a conversation with someone who said that YouTube is his version of what we used to do on, just television, where you turn on the television, you don't really know what you're going to watch, and sometimes a show you like goes on, and you watch that. So it's crazy to think that, like, YouTube has replaced our television
Yeah.
experience, but it's true. I mean, it's kind of like YouTube is the new TV, and like Netflix and Disney Plus and all these platforms are our version of the cinema now.
Oh yeah, you're right. And I grew up when there was 3 channels on the main TV, and then you had your UHF dial, which was like the 58 or however many it was, and that
Right.
always came in grainy if you were
Yeah.
lucky. And I think about how much things have evolved since then, and to just be able to, even before VHS, thinking about, you were lucky if a movie came on television, and then you had the commercial interruptions or things were censored, and now you can just, binge an entire season of something the day it comes out on Netflix. It's so different.
I remember, like, you said that, and then I had the same experience. I was growing up with a VHF thing, and I remember my mom looked at it in a different perspective, in an older generation, and she used to say, like, this is like amazing technology, because back in when she was growing up, she said that, like, she used to grow up in a she grew up in a small town, so she said that, like, once a month they would screen a movie, and it would be just like the same movie over and over again, because that was the one that they had, like, the license
Right.
to, or something.
Yeah.
So
It's nuts. And, I think about the old days that, even going back to the 90s when you had to wait a whole week to find out what happened on the next episode. And now you're like, "All right, I'm just going
right.
to get a snack and run to the bathroom, and then we'll start the next one."
Not to mention going to Blockbuster and,
Oh, yeah.
picking picking a movie, and then finding out it's kind of there's like a minute in the middle where it's not really working, and
Right. And having to rewind it before you took it back, or they'd charge you for it. And,
yeah.
I a couple years ago, I interviewed Ted Neely, who was in Jesus Christ Superstar. And I was telling him that back in the day, it only showed that movie on television at 4 a.m. on Easter Sunday. That was literally the only time you could watch it. And this was before VHS. So
Right.
we would try and go to bed early. And of course, we're all excited. And then we're sitting there in front of the TV like this, just trying to keep our eyes open. And as soon as VHS came out and we got our first VCR, the very first movie we bought was Jesus Christ Superstar, so that we could watch it whenever the hell we wanted.
That's crazy.
It's just, but now we really live in a world of instant gratification, and I think about one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you is because I know a lot of people these days, they understand a little bit more about how music is made. They might understand a little bit more about home studios because they've been more common. But I think what people don't really know about are all the people that help composers do the things that we do, or audio engineers or producers. And you
Right.
guys make us these amazing products that allow us to do what we do very easily. Now,
Thank
I've
you.
been an audio engineer for over 30 years, and if there's one thing I hate, it's audio engineering. So if there's something that can make my life easier, I am all about it. And I've got 1,000 plugins easily in
Right.
my, on my computer. But when
Right.
I found you guys, first of all, the thing that attracted me was obviously the visual component of your effects, because you have these beautiful pictures that are really interesting, and almost forget I'm working because I'm trying to really like learn what you've got on the picture. So why don't we
Right.
start there? Why don't we talk about how you came up with the idea, or how your company came up with the idea of doing these really amazing looking interfaces?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, n- the whole Safari pedals thing started really recently. In honesty, I mean, we started the company a year ago now,
Wow.
or almost a year ago, 11 months ago.
Mhm.
Um, and similar to what you said, I mean, I've been an audio engineer for 20 years, doing mostly mixing and mastering, and I have every single plugin on the planet. Um, so I really know kind of, the what's out there. And my initial idea was a combination of things. So first of all, I wanted like something that um, would be inspiring for creators and also for engineers, but like inspiring in the sense that I have this thing where I feel like there's a misrepresentation of like tools for audio engineers and for producers, because everything looks so kind of professional. And I mean, that might sound like a dumb statement, but everything's very kind of black and white. The words are usually very professional terms, or like trying to be the revolutionary whatever next thing, and I feel like that made sense at a certain point of time, but like now, like why do we actually have 100 different tools in our toolbox that do something similar?
Mhm.
And I think when you like sort of soul search the answer in yourself, or at least I did, I think the answer was because I'm looking for inspiration, and I'm looking for different ways of doing things, so I don't repeat myself, and I find more ways to kind of um, you know uh, treat my customers or my clients as a mixing engineer with things that suit whatever the music they're doing.
Right.
um, and music is an art, right? It's not, I mean, there is science behind it, but it's an art form, obviously. So why do all our tools look so kind of bland? And that was like my first thought when starting Safari Pedals. And I'm a very visual person, so I was kind of like thinking about it and looking around different kind of ideas and stuff. And then I noticed, um, that I, I noticed that like all the or most of the car pedal designs are super crazy. They're like
Mhm.
super out there. There's like all these crazy designs with crazy names, like the like like a distortion called Wild Thing and all these kind of
Right.
funny analogies. Um, and I have a really, really big guitar pedal collection, even though I don't really play guitar. And that also struck me as this thing where I was trying to figure out myself, like, why do I have this collection? And then it kind of hit me that, the guitar pedal world has a much better, in my opinion, kind of way of designing things to make them inspiring in terms of the visuals.
Right.
I thought about like, man, if I can just take that and put that in a plugin format. I mean, it's not inventing anything because there were many different guitar pedals in a plugin format before Safari, but there was never like a really kind of boutique approach to it. It was
Yeah.
usually big companies doing that as well.
Mhm.
Um, and again, if you compare that to like the guitar pedal industry, all these like super inspiring, crazy designs of little companies that do their own thing with guitar pedals, and they're always super wild and crazy. So I got inspired by that, and I just decided to jump in and create my own plugin company.
That makes a lot of sense, and I mean, I hate to admit it, but I'm a sucker for it. If you put a panda on a guitar pedal, I don't play guitar, but I'm gonna want it,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
Because it's
But
inspiring and
yeah.
it makes you feel a certain way.
And it's supposed to what we do is supposed to be fun, so
Yeah.
you're right. When you say that, like, the first thing that came to my mind when you were talking about, why do things have to look so professional? I'm picturing the CLA compressor. It is the most boring looking thing that I spend a ridiculous amount of time staring at,
Right.
and you're right. Yeah, if that had some little clowns on it or something, it'd be way more enjoyable.
And I think it's like a two-sided coin, right? Because like you want to feel that you trust whatever the tools you're using to be,
Yeah.
reliant and to sound good. And that's like, yes, it could be like super fun and quirky and weird, but at the same time, if it's a car analogy, you want the engine to run smoothly and you want to go from A to B.
Right.
So I feel like a lot of times I might be losing some customers that look at it and say like, "Oh, it's just a toy," or it's probably not going to get the sounds that I want, and they don't even give it a chance.
Yeah.
But underneath the hood, it's the same components. It's not. I'm not. You know. Uh, it's hard to compare between a million different types of plugins,
Sure.
but they sound good and they have good technology in them. And yeah, I think the reason, just wanted to say like one more point on this, like that the reason in my mind that like the whole industry is very kind of leaning towards the technology side and towards like the professionalism thing is based on our history. I mean, recorded music is not a very long part of history. If you look at it in perspective, it's been around for what, like 90 years? That's nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and in the early days, if you think about audio engineers, I don't know, like in the 40s or 50s, they're all wearing white robes and are very scientific.
Right. Like doctors almost.
Yeah, and I think that's where it came from. I think that's where like the tools were meant for those people. But
Right.
nowadays,
Yeah.
like when you say audio engineer, let's be honest here, like we're not engineers similar to mechanical engineer
Oh, right. Yeah.
that knows a lot about mechanics. Like I don't really know a lot about electronics, which is basically what my outboard gear and everything is.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Well, I would say that clinical is the way a lot of the gear looks for an audio engineer.
right,
It might have a red stripe on it, and that's about the most excitement you can hope for. It's really geared
right.
more towards the functionality. But I think I wonder, do people look at Safari pedals and think of them as just guitar oriented pedals? Because I'm actually using the flamingo reverb on my drum bus for my band's current album that we're writing, and
Right.
it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, that's thank you, and that's the whole point. The point for me was to kind of break the barriers and make tools that look like guitar pedals, but are actually perfect for any instrument in the mixing process. So that was where I came, like how I looked at it. But people do get confused, and I also get like these funny comments saying like, you shouldn't make these as pedals. You shouldn't call this pedals. It's not a pedal. And I don't know. People have weird conceptions about what's right and wrong, and
Yeah,
I try
I
and answer everyone with like a grin of humor and say like, you know,
yeah.
uh, just have fun. Don't.
No matter what you do, you're going to have people that are happy and you're going to have people that are unhappy. And the people that are unhappy are usually the first ones to let you know how they feel. The people that are happy are usually like, they'll just be like, cool, man. And maybe they'll like more of your posts or something. But
Yeah.
there's a weird interaction as I found in podcasting. There's a really weird dynamic that the people are more apt to just tell you they're unhappy, and people will tell you they're happy when it's too late.
Right.
It's
Right.
a
Right.
really
Right.
weird thing. But,
Yeah.
so I'm curious, how do you have a strategy, or does it just kinda come to you what you name each one? Because, like, I don't think I've ever associated reverb with a flamingo before.
Okay.
It's such a wild connection.
That's a good question. I think this is the part of the podcast where I'm gonna be 100% honest and real. And
Okay.
most of the ideas come from my two kids. I have two young boys. One is 4, and the other one is turning 6 soon. And I try and keep them in the loop of everything. To be honest, like I love having conversations with them.
Sure.
The name Safari came from my older son, and he was like, I told him I want to open a company, and this is what I want to do. And obviously, he didn't 100% understand what I was explaining, but he was like, Dad, you should call it Safari, and every product should be a name of an animal. And at first, I was like, that's so cute, and that's definitely not gonna happen. But then I thought about it like another, few days, and I was like, actually, that's like a really cool idea. Like,
Yeah.
there's endless amount of animals, and there's like a lot of kind of things that I was thinking about that relate to that in some odd way, where like be a studio animal and express yourself and be
Mhm.
wild and be free and all these things, and it kind of just matched perfectly what I was trying to to put out, and that was his idea. And
That's
then the
brilliant.
flamingo as well.
Mhm.
Flamingo was 100% Adam's idea, which is my older son's name. He was like, um, I was trying to explain to him what a reverb is, and he didn't really have a patience. And he's like, just call it flamingo. Everybody likes flamingos, and I'm like, dude, that's so true.
He's like your
So I
magic
went with
8
it.
ball. You just shake him and the brilliance comes out.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Um,
talk about a marketing dream. I mean, it's you've got so much to play with from a marketing standpoint. Obviously the vibrant colors are the first thing that's going to catch people's eyes. And I hate that I'm a sucker for that, but I am. I'll fully admit that.
yeah,
But when you get into them, the most beautiful thing about them is that the quality's there.
yeah,
It's so easy to work with the flamingo reverb, for example. It's the just out of the box, it's perfect. But you can just make subtle changes that take a second to make.
yeah.
And it's one of the nicest and smoothest reverbs I've ever worked with.
Thank you. That's amazing you said that. I really, really appreciate it. And I think that also like relates to a whole different topic where because, I'm a mixing engineer first, and I've been doing it for so many years. I kind of knew what I wanted it to sound like,
Mhm,
and it's I think it's another misconception in the audio world where like people maybe don't know this, but like most of the plugin companies or a lot of the plugin companies start from a developing approach, which is like let's focus on building this amazing DSP processing thing, and we'll get to the features later.
mhm.
And I kind of took the opposite approach because I'm not a developer myself. So I first kind of really honed it in on thinking about like how I want it to sound and what are the features going to be and how it's going to look. And only then I kind of started developing it. So it's kind of I guess, the the way the way I build plugins kind of really um, is different than a lot of the other companies, I think.
But that makes sense though, because if you don't know what the end game is, it seems like you could paint yourself into a corner in the development side of it and then have to rework and spend a lot of extra time and delay release because you weren't setting it up for success. That's a weird way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it comes from like the question is who is the person who is like behind the plugin and making like making them, and I think me not being a developer really changed, the obviously like the look and feel and the sound of the plugins.
Mhm.
I do think that there's like a downside to this approach where a lot of times, you know, I kind of take for granted, uh, or not take for granted, but like I think about sound in a similar way of like what's already out there. You know what I mean? So like I know how the other plugins are, and I know what I like and what I don't like, and I try and make something that I like, but like it's not like an engineering like a programming perspective where like the sky's the limit. You can like open a blank canvas and build whatever you want. And I think
Right.
one of the good examples to that is with the flamingo verb actually. You know how like when you twist the time, there's it moves between IRs. So
Mhm.
um it moves from like a really roomy sound to spring sound to a plate sound to a hall sound.
Mhm.
And I had that idea, but I didn't know you can blend between them.
Oh,
And
okay.
like I thought of it as not continuous. Like you would you would move the knob and then it would jump to the other IR. And when I presented it to David, the programmer that I work with, he said, "Oh, it'd be cool. We can blend the IRs and and make it continuous." And I never knew that existed because I've never seen any design like it or like heard any design like it. So yeah, those kind of things blow my mind still. Like a lot of times, there's like all these options where you're like, oh, you could do that? Like that's insane. I didn't know you can
Yeah.
do that.
But that's the beauty of the you coming from the perspective of how would I use this as an engineer, or how do I think my customers might use this? And then the developer coming in and going, okay, you live in a world that I don't live in. So I'm coming at this with a fresh set of eyes and
Right.
thinking of things that you might not think of because we tend to think in what we know. And it sounds like you guys have a great relationship that he feels comfortable making suggestions to you and you guys really work well together.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, it's all these like little things where sometimes I'll think, something would be a lot of development that would take like months and months, and he's like, "Oh, no, that's like the easiest thing ever." And then it's sometimes it's the opposite way too. Like I'll think something's really easy and then he'll say like, "No, that's like That's gonna take us months to develop. So
Right.
I I've been doing this for like a year now, and I still don't really have a a good understanding on the the things that take more time and less time. I think it's similar to engineering as well, where like a lot of times you get a comment from a client where be like, can you just like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, but maybe like replace the reverb. And you're like, well, the reverb's on like six different elements, so it's really
Right.
seems to mix, and it's gonna take me a few hours to get this done,
Oh,
so
yeah. Well, before I started working as an audio engineer, I went up to a studio in Denver when I was living in Colorado Springs to record a couple songs, and I brought naively brought a floor tom with me, and the engineer who ended up being the guy who really taught me more about any engineering that I would have learned anywhere else. He looked at the drum and he goes, "What'd you bring that for?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to put in a couple of really big drum accents." And he goes, "And you brought that?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what, like, give me an example. What are you thinking?" And I said, "Okay, you know that song, Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "You know those like really big toms?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, that's what I want." And he goes, "Do you have $100,000? Because you're not getting it with that." It's something, I mean, obviously now we can do that really easily,
Right.
but back in 1991 or, whenever it was, certainly was not the case. And it's amazing how the tech has grown, but my knowledge base, now I look back and I'm like, "I can't believe I was that stupid."
Yeah, I mean, you live and learn.
Mhm.
We've all been there, like, um, I think one of the like, a really funny story that I have, kinda similar to that is, the first time I recorded, like a rock band, um, I was I was assisting, and then the engineer caught the flu, and I had to do his job.
Ooh.
I'm sorry, and, it was, like, in a medium-sized, studio, and I knew how to do the technical stuff, but I really didn't know what I was doing in terms of, like, picking mics or, like, doing anything that's, like, other than just hitting record and making sure that it's going to the ADAT because that's what we used,
Oh, yeah.
when I was
Mhm.
doing that. So making sure that it's been recorded on ADAT, and then, um, I remember the guitar player walking in, it was, like, guitar day, and, I set up, whatever, like, a setup for him, and he was playing this, like, heavy, rock distortion guitar part, and then he did one take, and then I was like, "Oh, that was great. Do you wanna move on to the next part?" And then he's like, "No, let's duplicate that." And, and I was like, Why?" He's like, uh, "Well, I want it to sound, duplicated." And then it's like, "Wait, you've never duplicated an audio like a guitar track?" And I was like, "No, why would you do that?" And I thought to myself, like, "That's just dumb, like, it sounded like a good take, like, why?"
You're like,
And it's
"Amateur."
okay, he was nice, he was like, "Okay, check this out, pan the first one to the left, and then put the part that I'm doing now on the right, and you'll hear it." And
Yeah.
then did that, and I was like, "Oh."
But,
That's
it's like
how you get that
it's
down.
like parenting, there's really no guidebook, or it's not like when you have a kid, you've graduated from parenting school and you know what you're doing. It's a lot of stuff you kind of figure it out as you go. I mean, the ideal situation is you work with a couple of different engineers, or you're with somebody for a while, and you learn all those things, and then they shadow you when you do your first few sessions or whatever. But it doesn't always work that nicely.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
One thing I think is really amazing, because I didn't realize you'd only been doing this for a year, is you've got quite a number of products out. You really developed them quickly.
Yeah, so that's part of my kind of strategy is to I try to release a plugin every month.
Mhm.
Um, And I have various reasons to why, but I just think again, like it's really similar to my approach to music making. And some people would not agree with me, but I feel like there's a lot. Uh, okay, there's a few things. First of all, um, I really believe in like um, the initial kind of first like the first time you hear a song, that's the most important part. And the first time you record a song, that's the most important take. And that kind of initial magic. And I try to incorporate that in plugin making, as weird as it sounds as well, because I feel like if there's too much time between the idea and the execution, you lose uh, your goal, and you lose that kind of early approach that you have with the idea. And a lot of times, like I'm actually experiencing it right now as there's a plugin. It's going to be like a tape emulation that we're working on. And we had some kind of kind of a few technical issues with it, and now it's been like I would say like 3 weeks late to be released, and now I'm starting to have second thoughts about like all these different sound elements in it, and I was like, wait, that's right. Like, should I change this? Should I change that? And I just I feel like, um, it's usually the best when you just put it out there as fresh as it can be, and then people feel that excitement that it's, like, new and exciting. I don't know,
Yeah.
that's my approach. And then the other side of it as well is, like, I think that we live in a day and age where, um, there's such a big influx in everything, but, like, in content and in products, and, I feel like, you know, things have a much shorter, shelf life. So, especially the things that I work on, I'm not trying to invent the wheel here, so I feel like it has a shorter lifespan than, what was conceived in the past, so
Right. Yeah. I understand that, and I think, the most important thing is that what you put out, you're happy with, because if you're not happy with it, you know that the people aren't gonna be happy with it, but it's also so easy to overthink anything these days because we have
yeah,
so many options available to us. I mean, you could do an endless amount of things to this tape emulator, but at the end of the day, your first mix is usually the best one. And then when you start tweaking things, it starts getting questionable. You lose a little sonic quality, then you work harder to get it back. And now you're further off. You can talk yourself out of a good product very easily.
exactly, and again, like, I've experienced it in the studio so many times working with artists, like, I feel like the most talented artists I've ever worked with are the people that kind of took that initial magic of writing a song and like a few days later being in the studio or producing a song and straight out like let's produce it, let's record it, let's mix it, let's get it out of the door. um that's where the real magic that I've experienced at least exists, and it's like where you kind of manage to capture a certain point in time and lock it into a song, and then it's hopefully it can last a lifetime.
Yeah.
The projects that kind of didn't really end up working so well, I mean, it's not like it's not a rule or anything, but but like 8 times out of 10, the projects that, usually didn't really work out, commercially and didn't really work out in terms of how people received it were the ones that were, like, sitting on the shelf for, like, 2 years, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
And they were like, "Hey, do you still have that mix session? It's been like 6 or 8 months, but we still have like a few comments." And you nibble with it, and it's just like the magic's gone. There's no other way to explain it. Like,
it's like trying to add fresh clay to clay that's already been hardened.
Yeah.
You know, it just it's really hard to pick up and get that energy that you had for it when you were first working on it. Um, I used to do an Aerosmith podcast where we were going through every Aerosmith song that they ever recorded, and there were some songs that I just felt like they didn't even know each other when they were working on their individual parts, and other ones where I would tell my co-hosts, like, I feel like they're all in the studio recording at the same time. They're looking at each other across the room. They've got smiles and eye contact. Like, I feel a real unity in this
Right.
music, and you can really tell the difference as a listener.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
as an audio
100%.
engineer, there's only so much you can do to save a song. It's gotta be there.
And then, like what's another interesting thing to mention here is like with all the crazy technology and all the things that you could do with songs these days, um, most of the people, even young people, like even my son who's like 6 years old, he loves listening to the Beatles. And I didn't it's I'm honestly, I didn't try to push him to like the Beatles or anything. Like I'll happily play him, I don't know, like Post Malone or Doja Cat or whatever. Um, no issue with that. But he just gravitates towards that, and I feel like most people on planet Earth uh, like some sort of old music or another. Like it could be Aerosmith, or I'm not saying like they're super old, but
Mm,
you know what I mean. Like there's these like timeless pieces of music.
yeah,
And when you think about it, most of those were done without a click track. They were done at the heat of the moment because that was the only way to do things. Because if you record on tape too many times, it's gone.
yeah,
And studio time was expensive, and all these different things. Um, and those are the ones that are pretty much timeless. Like I think that I don't know, like "One Love" from Bob Marley will forever be a song that's relevant. And their recording of it is pretty much like perfect. I mean, it doesn't sound modern, but it sounds great.
yeah,
And my point is that like I feel like all these like shiny objects of like, oh, I can auto-tune and I can fix the vocals 5 times and I can comp the vocals and we can record it in my house and then in your house and then send the files and do all these crazy things. Um, all these kind of things, they're great. I mean, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not trying to be like an old grumpy.
yeah. Old man
um,
yells at cloud.
yeah, exactly. But I think that there is like a point where you need to think about it and say like, where where is the like magic of the song, like with all these like different things, and why is why is it that these old songs get to live forever? And if you compare it to different arts, it's not necessarily always like that. Like
Right,
compare it to I had a TV exec say this. He said, "Music people are lucky because if you hit gold, like if you get to a point where a song is like amazing and lives forever, then it lives forever. But with
right.
TV, it's never that. Like the
Yeah,
only thing that like okay, like I like watching Seinfeld, but I don't think my kids will want to watch Seinfeld. That's
mhm,
not like I don't think that's a thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but like it's a point to think about. Like it only
yeah.
works with music,
It's
I
true.
think.
I mean, I think maybe paintings can have that timeless also, but yeah, you're right. And I think music connects with us in a way that nothing else really does. And you know, shows like Seinfeld, I mean, you're talking comedy, so comedy is hit and miss with people, especially
Right.
generational. You know, a
100%.
lot
Yeah.
of jokes that were on sitcoms do not land very well in today's society.
Yeah.
But, you
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
think part of what is attractive about those older songs is that they weren't perfect. You could
Yeah.
tell everybody wasn't exactly together, and it's more human sounding. Everything now is so shifted into place and perfected and auto-tuned and things that I don't know, I don't find it as enjoyable because it doesn't feel human. It
Yeah.
feels assembled.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's it's so true, and it's funny that we go that route with music because again, like you it's almost like the opposite of making sense because like you're trying to touch someone's like emotions, you're trying to express yourself,
Yeah.
and you're doing that by over like by recording 90 takes of your voice. That doesn't like you know what I mean?
Right, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's
Um,
a weird I mean, and even just in the audio engineering world, I mean, we went from analog to digital, and now we're trying to recreate analog and do it digitally,
yeah,
and I find that just fascinating because we did lose something, I think, when we shifted. Music did sound colder for a while.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But thanks to guys like you who are giving us these wonderful tools to make things sound much better and much smoother. I tell you that flamingo verb is my go-to reverb now,
Wow.
and I'm just using it on my first project. But I love it. It's smooth. It has just a wonderful tail to it, and yeah, I really dig it. And like I said, it looks great on my screen. I'm happy to have something that kind of visually stands out and makes me pay attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I've got all the links in the show notes for you guys, the YouTube channel, all the social medias, and the Safari Pedals website. You've got some interesting combinations because you've got all the pedals are available individually, and then you've got a mini bundle, and then you've got the entire bundle.
Right, right. Yeah. Um, yeah, I just try and find a way to suit everyone's, wants and needs in terms of the plugins. I try and kind of market it as something that's fun and not necessarily very expensive.
Mhm.
So right now you can get the whole bundle for 110 bucks, which I think is a really good deal.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, and the individual pedals are very reasonably priced for, what they can do.
Right,
I think you've nailed a really good price point, and it's quality stuff. So you're getting the quality, you're not paying, 300 or $400 for every individual component, and
right.
you're getting something that's gonna work and, has a great aesthetic to it. So, no, you're on the right track. I love what you've created, and that's why I wanted to reach out to you in the first place.
Thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate it, and it means a lot to me, that people like yourself kind of relate to what I'm trying to put out and get a good experience from it. Because at the end of the day, that's a big part of why I'm doing it, and it's
Right.
exciting to hear that people use it on their music and
Mhm.
hopefully create stuff with it. So
Well, I don't
thanks.
know that I'm doing that, I hope so, but
The
the thing
first part
is
you're doing for sure. The second part is subjective.
right, yeah, exactly. Well, fortunately, right now, I'm just using it on drum tracks for the band, so that comes down to whether the track was any good or not. But, the thing is that you guys are kind of the unsung heroes of what music is for the listener.
Wow.
We can write the melodies, we can write the rhythms, we can write killer bass lines, but you guys help us make it sound good. And that's the most important part because if you could write a great piece of music, but if it sounds like shit, no one's going to listen to it.
Right.
So, without you doing what you do, we couldn't do what we do as well. So thank you very much for everything that you put into it because you really do make a difference for us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, thank you for coming on the show. We will, like I said, guys, check out all the links in the show notes. Now, a quick note on Wednesday's show. Um, I've already recorded it, and I'm really kind of torn on how I feel about the album that I reviewed. It's Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime #1. There is a spoiler alert fence on that episode if you want to get into what actually happened in the story. Since I have recorded that episode, I found out a little more. And for those of you who do listen past the spoiler fence, I'll just say I'm even less happy than I was when I recorded the episode, but I still love the album. It's fucking amazing. So join us on Wednesday for that. Check out all the links in the show notes. Noam, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun talking, and I'm looking forward to seeing it go live.
All right. Well, it will be live this Saturday. And thank you. We'll have you back on one of these days again.
All right. I would
Cool.
love to.
Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. Cheers.